Thanks, Goose. Bound by Flame is hard.
Get me out of here!
I kind of have my hands full right now.
Bound by Flame is an action RPG brought to us by French developer Spiders. An evil army of dead walkers and their masters, the Ice Lords, are travelling from the north to kill and freeze everything in their path. The Ice Lords are coming.
Each battle only served to swell their ranks with the defeated dead.
Two factions, the Elves and a group of scholars known as the Red Scribes, are doing everything they can to win the war.
You can play either as a beardy or lady Vulcan, who's part of a mercenary army led by a Sean Connery impersonator.
This is not my first walk in the wilds, arsewipe.
You're put in charge of protecting the Red Scribes as they perform an important ritual, but things don't go to plan. Imbued with this power of the flame, you're now a key force in stopping the war.
This is an ambitious RPG from a small team. It's aiming for challenging RPG combat and a rich universe of characters to explore.
There's something in the air that stinks.
There's even a Dragon Age-style companion system.
If I tag along with you, I might at least get to know you better.
But with a AAA price tag for console versions, it's hard to forgive the game's many flaws.
Yes, there are some major issues with this game holding back its potential, but there's also some very good work. I think the best part about the game is actually the art.
This is Valvanor.
I just think it's really beautiful, Hex. Once you get past that first area, there's some nice high-res textures and backdrops.
Yeah, I agree, and the music is a real standout too. Levels and areas you quest in are a little bit claustrophobic and cluttered though. But this does encourage you to use the environment to divide and conquer enemies and avoid ranged attacks, which is a good thing. But it's also quite frustrating to navigate, especially when you can't drop down off small ledges or go into shallow water. I hate that, Barjo. It feels so dated now. Either put up a fence or just let me drop down.
Yeah, in fairness, it doesn't happen that much, but still it drives me to a particularly high level of madness. But I did like all the detail in this world and the art style, especially the gear, which looks so good, and I wasn't expecting that from such a small team. There's stacks of armor and weapons to collect. And if you put in a certain treasure-finding perk, you can busy yourself for quite a while hunting down the ringing hints of nearby loot. I got a bit obsessed with that, Hex.
Yeah, it taps into that Nirnroot madness, doesn't it? There are 3 class trees. The warrior uses 2-handed weapons, the ranger focuses on dual daggers and stealth, and pyromancy, which feeds off your bound flame. The tech trees are well thought out. There are a lot of interesting perks and bonuses which make a massive difference to the combat. And that's part of the problem. It's just totally unbalanced.
Yeah, so much so that I felt like I couldn't even get through certain fights without specific perks from the tech trees. It just makes things unnecessarily hard, I think, even on easy.
Yeah, if you're gonna have an easy setting in a game, make it actually easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I also felt like the fundamental issue is really that enemies have too much health. Even the plants are jerks.
Yeah, when you see just a tiny sliver of health disappear after a big attack, it is quite disheartening.
Yeah, and the enemies do so much damage as well, and it is quite hard to block their attacks. There's just not enough telegraphing. Fights usually turn into a tug of war of blocking and swinging where you can, praying that you'll get a hit in. Oh, and the bosses, Hex! They feel like they're on loan from a vanilla WoW 40-person raid. I just was left wondering, how am I going to get through this fight more than once?
You're encouraged to counter as much as possible by blocking at the last second, which sends the game into a short bit of slow motion. And there are perks to improve counter damage, but it's never really enough to reward you for your careful timing.
Yeah, I felt like the more successful fights I had were because of unseen dice rolls on gear that had lots of interrupt stats. They kept enemies off my back.
I also felt like some of my hits weren't connecting properly, or maybe enemies just weren't reacting to them. And tough enemies knock you down quite a lot, and they keep swinging at you with no way to avoid taking massive damage, even if you have the perk that lets you get up quicker. It's just relentless, isn't it?
Yeah, this game likes to hit you when you're down. And if you get backed into a corner and the camera kind of gets in the way, oh, it's just tears. I'm tempted to mention Dark Souls because there are some similarities in how you lock onto enemies and avoid attacks, but the difference with Dark Souls is it's challenging because you can see that a fight is winnable. It might take you a few goes, but it's not based around luck, it's based around your own skill. This just felt a bit unfair.
Yeah, I get the impression that they were trying to make something like Dark Souls, which is unique and challenging, and I do like that fights are a tough tussle with enemies, making you utilize all potions and crossbows and traps at your disposal. But they just didn't nail down that delicate balance of skill versus punishment.
Yeah, I think this game really highlights how hard it must be making something as perfect as Dark Souls. With Bound by Flame, I felt like my skill never mattered enough to counter the enemies the game threw at me.
The creature design is really incredible though. And there are some interesting attack patterns and effects. If only they were fun to fight, Barjo.
Indeed. There is quite a lot of story and characters written into this game, and I thought some of the performances were pretty good.
These powers of yours are interesting.
Oh, really? No way. I thought all the writing and the voice work was awful.
God damn it, Captain. This is an important battle. You have to include the blades in it.
Now you listen closely, Vulcan. I am the captain of this company. It's me who decides. You don't like it? Not my problem.
It just didn't seem quite right to me. Too much of a mishmash of accents and ideas.
Well, it could be a test to see if I'm being a good soldier, General Sir.
I do appreciate the amount of dialogue in the game, but also motion capture has come so far in recent years that it's quite difficult to endure these wobbly scenes.
If you do not resist, it will crush your soul.
Hey, take it easy. One day at a time, okay? I'm gonna take a walk.
I didn't mind that so much, but I was craving more character development and backstories. I can't even tell you much about the main character, Vulcan, except he whinges a lot.
I'm just a pissed off mercenary who's gonna get his ass chewed out big time as soon as we get to camp.
And he's randomly rude to people.
Several of the villagers have been behaving curiously of late.
They're just hungover. You'd know if you got drunk more often. And you look like you need to.
Is it true you killed the beast?
Is it true you quit the booze?
I did like the idea of the main character having this demon trapped inside them, though, maybe trying to take control or free himself.
I must endure your wailings and lamentations. Pitiful.
It's an interesting conflict, and apparently some of your actions in regards to this do have consequences. But the demon's dialogue does seem to have a lot of thous and doths in it to make him seem a little bit more arcane and ancient.
Thou didst hold the power to face the necromancers, yet thou didst flee.
What the?
Yeah, it does feel a bit forced, doesn't it? Overall, I gave the dialogue a really good go, but it's hard when you're not invested in the characters. And the biggest problem I had with this game was committing. I was just so frustrated at the gameplay. Deep down, I knew I wasn't on board with the story, so after a while I just unintentionally zoned out a bit.
All right.
Just follow the markers, just keep questing. Just keep questing.
I can appreciate this game was made by a small team, and really the devs should be applauded for much of the work here. But at the same time, it just feels like it was overreaching a bit.
Yeah, it does feel a bit overambitious, doesn't it? Maybe if they aimed a bit smaller, we'd get a more balanced and focused game.
Yeah, there's just too many rough edges that tip the scales into making this not an enjoyable experience. And perhaps if you persist and really get into the crafting and stats, you might find some joy in the long fights. But for me, this was an affair of frustration, so I doth give it 4.
Hex, I have a confession to make. I haven't finished this game. I had a rage delete about 8 hours in.
It's never a good sign when you feel the need to remove the game from your PC.
I wanted to keep going. I do believe there is a really fun game in there somewhere. It's just so hard to get to, and I think most people will probably quit after a couple of hours. So I doth give it 4 as well.
I saved our asses and you're all just, hey, what's for lunch?